My wife vanished for a week without a word, then came back laughing, saying, "I needed time away from you. You should be grateful I returned." I took a deep breath and said, "Glad you enjoyed it. Now you will have all the time in the world." I handed her a black envelope and watched her turn red. Before we go on, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling us which city you're tuning in from. My wife disappeared for a whole week and came back laughing as if she'd just returned from vacation. She's standing in front of me in the living room, taking off her shoes with that naturalness that only comes from arrogance. Her bag falls on the couch. The afternoon light comes through the window and falls on her face, illuminating that smile that used to disarm me. "I needed some time away from you, Aurelio," she says without even looking me in the eyes. She turns around and observes me as if I were a stranger. "You should be thankful I came back." Thankful. The word hangs in the air between us. I take a deep breath, deeper than I've breathed in a long time. I feel the oxygen fill my lungs. My heart beat with a calmness that shouldn't exist right now. "I'm glad you enjoyed it," I say. Finally, my voice sounds serene, almost polite. I walk toward the sideboard and open the top drawer because now you'll have all the time in the world. I take out the black envelope. I've kept it there all week waiting for this exact moment. I turn towards her and hold it out to her. Teresa looks at it as if it were poison. "What's this?" "Open it." She takes it with trembling hands, breaks the seal, takes out the papers. The first one is a photograph. I see her turn pale. Then comes another document and another one. Her eyes move from one page to another faster and faster. The color completely leaves her face. I see her turn red, then pale, then red again, like a tomato ripening in reverse. Where did you get this?" Her voice no longer has that superior tone. It's barely a broken whisper. I sit on the armchair across from her and cross my legs. I'm wearing my white shirt, the one she used to say made me look distinguished. "You had a whole week to yourself, Teresa." I also took advantage of that time. There are decisions made in a second. Others mature over years of silence, of swallowing your words, of pretending you don't see what's right in front of your eyes. Mine matured in exactly 7 days. 7 days in which my wife disappeared without a trace, without a call, without an explanation. And when she came back, she did it as if nothing happened, as if I were such an idiot I didn't even deserve a well-crafted lie. "Do you want to know what I did while you were enjoying your freedom?" I ask. She doesn't answer. She's paralyzed with the papers trembling in her hands. I can see how she tries to process what she's seeing, how her brain refuses to accept reality. I hired a private investigator, a good man, very professional. He got me everything I needed in less than 3 days. I pause. I let the silence settle between us like an unwanted guest. The photos with him, the hotel receipts you paid with our joint account, the messages. All the messages, Teresa, from 2 years ago. I see her knees give way. She drops onto the couch, still holding those papers as if they were her death sentence. And in a way, they are. "Aurelio, I can explain." "No." I raise a hand. My voice is still soft, almost gentle. That's what surprises me most about myself right now. There's no yelling, there are no tears, just a calm that comes from having cried all possible tears in private. I don't want explanations. Anymore, I stand up and walk toward the window. Outside, life goes on. Neighbors water their gardens. Kids play on the street. Everything's so normal, so oblivious to the earthquake happening inside these 4 walls. "Do you know what hurts me most, Teresa?" I ask without turning around. I hear a sob behind me, but I don't turn around. No, it isn't the betrayal itself yet. I'm a 63-year-old man. I've seen enough of the world to know people are capable of anything. My reflection in the glass shows me a tired man, with gray hair on his temples and wrinkles that tell stories of hard work. What hurts me is you treating me like an idiot, as if I were too old, too blind to notice. The sob turns into crying, but I still don't turn around. 32 years, Teresa, 32 years together. I worked 12 hours a day for half my life to give you the house you wanted, the trips you dreamed of, the security I promised the day we got married. My voice breaks slightly, but I recover quickly. And while I worked, while I built our future, you were building another life with another man, with my money. Aurelio, Please, there are more papers in that envelope. I finally turned towards her. Bank statements showing the transfers you made to his account. $20,000 in total. Money from our savings, from the fund we were going to use for our retirement. I let those words sink like stones in deep water. Do you know how many overtime hours I worked to gather those $20,000? She's crying now. Makeup runs down her cheeks, forming black lines. She looks small, broken. A part of me, the part that still remembers the man I was, wants to approach and comfort her. But that part is buried under layers of pain and betrayal. There are also legal documents there. Divorce papers. They're ready. They just need your signature. I walked slowly towards the front door. Our lawyer Lorenzo took care of everything. The house stays in my name as it should, since I paid for it completely. The joint accounts are closed. Your name was removed from all of them last Tuesday. You can't do this, she says. Her voice is barely a thread. I already did. I open the door. The cool evening air comes in like a blessing. You have until Sunday to get your things. I hired a lawyer who'll be present throughout the process. You can only take what's yours, nothing else. Teresa stands up with difficulty. Her legs tremble. Aurelio, we can talk about this. It was a mistake. I can change. We can go to couples therapy. Couples therapy. The question comes out like a bitter laugh I don't recognize as mine. Teresa, you were unfaithful to me for 2 years. You spent our savings on another man, and 3 hours ago you came back to this house laughing, telling me I should be thankful you returned. I shake my head. There's no therapy that fixes that. There are no words that undo what you did. She takes a step towards me. Her hands reach out, pleading, please, don't leave me like this. I have nowhere to go. You should have thought about that before. My voice sounds harder now. Before every lie, before every night you spent in his arms, before every dollar you stole from our account. It isn't theft. That money was mine too. It was ours. I correct her calmly, but you decided it was yours to give to him. Well, now you face the consequences of that decision. The silence that follows is thick, almost physical. I can hear the wall clock ticking the seconds away. Tick, tick, tick. Every second is another nail in our marriage's coffin. There's something else in the envelope. A letter it's for your family with copies of all the evidence. I paused deliberately. I haven't sent it yet. But without complicating the divorce, without trying to keep something that isn't yours, that letter will reach your mother's hands, your siblings, and every person we know. Her eyes widen with pure horror. You wouldn't dare. I already dared a lot, Teresa. I dared to trust you. I dared to love you even when you stopped loving me. I dared to work like a slave so you wouldn't lack anything. I take a step towards her. For the first time in this whole conversation, I let her see some of the pain I've been hiding. Don't challenge me now. Don't provoke me to show you what I'm capable of when pushed to the limit. She steps back, trips over the couch. The black envelope falls to the floor. Documents and photographs scatter everywhere. Evidence of her betrayal scattered like pieces of a puzzle that'll never be put back together. Aurelio. Her voice is a last attempt, but there's no strength in it anymore. Goodbye, Teresa. There's no emotion in my goodbye. Just finality, 5 days. On Sunday, at 6 p.m., I want your keys on the kitchen table. I turn around and walk toward the door. I don't look back. Every step feels heavy, as if I were carrying years of pain on my shoulders. But there's also something else, something I didn't expect to feel. Freedom. I walk out of the house and close the door behind me. The sound of the deadbolt is definitive. Final. I walk toward my car under the afternoon sun. The shadows are long. The day is dying, but I for the first time in 2 years feel alive. 6 months ago my life was different. Not perfect, but stable, predictable. And for a 63-year-old man who's worked all his life, stability is a luxury not valued until it's lost. I woke up every day at 6 a.m., always before Teresa. I went down to the kitchen, made coffee in the Italian coffee maker we bought on our trip to Rome 10 years ago. The aroma filled the house. It was my moment of peace before the day began. Teresa came down around 7. I already had her mug ready with 2 spoons of sugar, exactly how she liked it. 32 years of marriage teach you those details. The small gestures that build a shared life. Or so I thought. Good morning, she'd say, kissing my cheek before sitting down. Her hair still messy from sleep. Her eyes still sleepy. Those were the moments I treasured, the simple moments. We had breakfast together, toast, strawberry jam, orange juice. We talked about unimportant things, the weather, the neighbors, plans for the weekend, surface conversations I confused with intimacy. At 8, I went to work. I've been at the same accounting firm for 25 years. It isn't a glamorous job, but it pays the bills more than pays them. It actually allowed me to buy this house, save for retirement, give Teresa the comfortable life she always wanted. I came home around 6 p.m., sometimes later when there was a lot of work. Teresa was usually in the living room watching TV or talking on the phone with her friends. "How was your day?" She'd ask. "Good." "A lot of work?" I'd answer, leaving my briefcase by the door. We had dinner together almost every night. I cooked on weekends, she did during the week. It was an arrangement that worked, or I thought it worked. Friday nights were ours. We went to dinner at that little Italian restaurant downtown, the one with the red candles on the tables, and the owner who always remembers us. I ordered pasta, she fish, we shared a bottle of wine, we talked, we laughed. What did we talk about? Now trying to remember, I realize I don't know. Empty words, automatic laughs, rehearsed gestures of marriage that was already dead, but neither of us had noticed, or maybe only I hadn't noticed. The first signs started about 4 months ago. Little things. So small I ignored them, I rationalized them, I turned them into something normal. Teresa started checking her phone more frequently during meals, while we watched TV in bed, before sleeping. The screen illuminated her face in the dark, and she smiled, looking at something she never shared with me. "Who's it?" I'd ask, trying to sound casual. "Dolores," she'd say, without looking up. "She's telling me about her trip." Dolores, her lifelong friend, her perfect excuse, she started going out more. Gatherings with friends that went on until late, work dinners she'd never mentioned before. Yoga classes on Tuesday and Thursday nights. "It's good you have your activities," I told her, "because that's what an understanding husband is supposed to say. It's good for you to get out of the house, idiot." That's what I was, an understanding idiot. The way she dressed changed too. More careful, younger, I guess. New blouses I didn't remember seeing before. Different perfume, a more expensive one, more sophisticated. "Is it new?" I asked one night, pointing to her red dress. "This I've had it for months." She answered quickly, too quickly, but I would have remembered it. I always noticed what she wore. It was one of those details I'd learned to observe over decades of being together. The calls changed too. Before, when her phone rang at home, she answered it in front of me. Normal conversations with a normal voice. But now she got up and went to another room. "I need privacy," she said when I looked at her curiously. "It's Carmen. She's going through a difficult time." Carmen, another friend, another excuse. Sex practically disappeared. Not that at our age it was a frequent thing, but it happened once a week, maybe twice if it was a good month. But suddenly, nothing, whole weeks without touching each other. "I'm tired," she'd say, turning over in bed. "I understand," I'd answer, because what else could I say? I didn't want to be the kind of man, the one who pressures, the one who demands. So I fell asleep alone on my side of the bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering when we'd stopped being us. My brother Antonio was the first to say something. He came to visit us one Sunday. Teresa had left early, another of her gatherings with friends. "Where's Teresa?" he asked, sitting in the kitchen while I made coffee with Dolores. "They went shopping." Antonio looked at me in a strange way, a look I couldn't interpret at that moment. Now I know it was pity. "Aurelio," he said after a long silence. "Is everything okay between you two?" "Of course." "Why do you ask?" He shrugged, but the question hung in the air like smoke that doesn't dissipate. "I'm just asking. You seem different, quieter." "I'm fine," I insisted. "It's just work, a lot of stress." But it wasn't just work, although at that moment I refused to admit it. One night, about 3 months ago, I passed by the Italian restaurant. Our restaurant was Thursday, and I'd left the office early because I had a headache. I thought about buying some takeout, and I saw her. Teresa was sitting at our table, the table by the window we always reserve on Fridays. But it was Thursday, and she wasn't alone. There was a man across from her. I couldn't see his face clearly from where I stood on the street, but I saw his hands. I saw how he touched my wife's hands on the table. I saw how she smiled. That smile that used to be just for me. I stood there like an idiot for 5 full minutes. People walked past me. Traffic kept flowing. The world kept turning, but I was frozen. Eventually I left, walked back to my car, drove home, sat on the dark couch and waited. Teresa arrived at 11 p.m. Where were you? I asked when she came in. She was startled. I didn't expect to find you awake with Dolores. I already told you this morning. Dolores, I repeated. Yes, we went to dinner. Why? The lie came out of her mouth so easily, without hesitation, without visible guilt. Where did you go? To that new place downtown, the Japanese one. Another lie on top of another lie. I could have confronted her right there. I could have told her I saw her. I know she was at our restaurant with another man, but I didn't. Why didn't I? Fear, I guess. Fear that if I said it out loud, it'd become real. Fear of destroying what was left of my life. Fear of being alone at 63. So I swallowed the words, pushed them down until they hurt in my chest like sharp stones. That's good. I finally said, I'm glad you had fun. She kissed my forehead as if everything was fine, as if she hadn't spent the last 4 hours with another man in the place that was ours. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to her quiet breathing beside me. How could she sleep so peacefully? How could she lie to my face and then close her eyes without remorse? The next morning, everything went back to normal. Coffee at 6. She came down at 7. We had breakfast together as always, but something had changed in me. I started observing more, noting things I previously ignored, receipts in her bag, male perfume stains on her clothes, messages she deleted immediately after reading them. One afternoon, while she was in the shower, I took her phone. She had the password written down somewhere years ago for emergencies. I'd never used it. I'd never felt the need. Until now, my hand trembled as I unlocked the screen. Part of me hoped to find nothing, that it had all been my imagination, paranoia of an old, jealous man. But there they were, hundreds of messages with a number saved as J. I didn't read them all, I couldn't. The first lines were enough to feel the floor open under my feet. I miss your skin. I can't wait to see you on Tuesday. You're the best thing that's happened to me. Words that should have been for me, feelings that should have been mine. I closed the phone and put it exactly where it was. I sat on the edge of the bed and breathed. I just breathed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I just sat there in silence while shower steam came from under the bathroom door and my marriage crumbled into invisible pieces around me. Teresa came out of the shower 20 minutes later with a towel wrapped around her hair. Are you okay? She asked, seeing me. You look pale? I'm fine. I lied. Because now I could lie too, just tired. That night, after she fell asleep, I went down to my office. I opened my laptop, searched on Google, private investigator near me. I found 3 options. I called the first one on the list the next morning from my car in my work parking lot. His name was Lorenzo. Professional voice, serious, non-judgmental. What do you need, Mr. Montes? I need to know the truth about my wife. Lorenzo, and I met in a cafe far from my neighborhood, a place where nobody knew me, where nobody could see me conspiring against my own wife. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I told Teresa I had a work meeting. Another lie adding to the collection we were both building. Lorenzo was a man in his 40s. Gray suit, direct gaze, notepad in hand. Shook my hand firmly and ordered a black coffee without sugar. Mr. Montes, tell me what's going on. And I told him everything, from the behavior changes to the phone, from the restaurant to the messages I'd seen. My voice broke at times, but I stayed firm. This was no time for tears. Do you have any idea who it could be? Lorenzo asked, taking notes. No, I just know he's saving her phone as Jay. How long do you suspect this has been going on? The changes started 4 months ago, but I stopped, swallowed hard, but the messages I saw seemed to suggest it's been longer, much longer. Lorenzo nodded as if he'd heard this story 1,000 times before. He probably had. What do you need from me specifically? Proof. I need to know who he is. I need to know how long this has been going on. And I stop surprised by what I was about to say. I need to know if she's been using her money for this. Understood. I'm going to need basic information. Her routine, places she frequents, bank account numbers, and if you have access. I gave him everything, every detail of Teresa's life I knew, her yoga schedules, her friends' names, the places she said she went. I also gave him access to our joint accounts. I was the primary account holder, so I had that right. How long do you think it'll take? I asked. Depends. If she's careless, a few days. If she's careful, maybe a week or two. He paused. Mr. Montez, I have to ask you something important. What? Are you sure you want to know? Because once you have the proof, you won't be able to unknow it. You won't be able to go back. I look him in the eyes. This man, this stranger, was giving me one last chance to keep living in ignorance, to keep pretending my marriage was fine. I'm sure, I said. I can't live a lie anymore. We agreed on the payment, $3,000 up front, the rest when he had results. It was expensive, but what price does the truth have? What price does getting your dignity back have? I took the money from my personal account, the one Teresa didn't check, the account where I kept my extra salary, year-end bonuses, my emergency fund. This, I decided, definitely qualified as an emergency. The following days were the strangest of my life. I kept going to work, kept coming home, kept having breakfast with Teresa as if nothing was happening, but now I knew someone was following her. Someone was documenting every move, every lie. I felt like an actor in my own life, saying the right lines, making the appropriate gestures, but completely empty inside. Are you okay, Aurelio? Teresa asked one night during dinner. You're very quiet lately. It's just work, I answered, pushing the food around my plate. A lot of stress. You should take a few days off. Rest. The irony was almost funny. Her suggesting I rest while probably planning her next encounter with him. Maybe I said, Thursday night, 3 days after hiring Lorenzo, I got a text message. I have something. Can we meet tomorrow? My heart raced so fast. Only 3 days, and he already had something. Yes, same place, same time. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed awake listening to Teresa breathe beside me, wondering what Lorenzo would show me, wondering if I was ready to know. Friday arrived slowly, like torture. Every hour at the office felt like an eternity. I looked at the clock every 5 minutes. My colleagues noticed my distraction, but nobody asked. They probably thought it was my age. I was losing focus. If they only knew. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early. I ordered a coffee I didn't drink. I just held it in my hands, letting the heat burn my palms. Lorenzo arrived on time. He carried a brown folder under his arm. He sat across from me without saying hello. Mr. Montez, I found something, and it isn't going to be easy to see. Show me. He opened the folder. The first photo hit me like a punch in the stomach. Teresa, my wife, leaving a downtown hotel, wasn't alone. There was a man next to her, younger than me, maybe by 10 years tall, well-dressed. His hand was on her lower back. This was Tuesday, Lorenzo said. The day he said she had yoga. He moved to the next photo. The two of them entering a restaurant, one I didn't know, sitting at a secluded table, leaning toward each other, intimate. And Wednesday? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Wednesday, too. More photos. Different places. Same story. Who is he? His name's Javier Ruiz. He's 47. Works in real estate. Divorced, no kids. Lorenzo paused. And this is where it gets worse, Mr. Montez. I didn't know how it could be worse, but Lorenzo took more papers out of the folder. I checked your bank statements, as you authorized me. There are transfers, many transfers, to his account. I looked at the numbers. $500 here, $1,000 there, $2,000. The dates went back almost 2 years. Add up the total, I said, although I didn't want to know. $20,000 in the last 24 months. $20,000, $20,000 from our savings, from the money I'd earned working overtime, from the fund we'd created for our retirement, to travel, to enjoy our last years together. And she'd given it to him. There's more. I asked, although I wasn't sure I wanted to know messages. I managed to get some. Lorenzo took out more papers, printouts of conversations. Not all of them, but enough to understand the situation. I read them. Every word was a nail in my heart. You're the best lover I've ever had. I wish I could leave him, but it's complicated. I feel alive when I'm with you. With him, I just feel nothing. With him, I was him. Now she didn't even use my name anymore. How long? I asked. How long has this been going on? Based on the oldest messages I could get, at least 2 years, probably more. 2 years. 730 days of lies, of kissing me in the morning and sleeping with him in the afternoon, of sleeping next to me while dreaming of another man. There's one more thing, Lorenzo said, his voice softer now. The hotel where they meet, she pays for it with a credit card in her name, but linked to your joint account. $200 each time, twice a week on average. I did the math in my head, 200 twice a week for 2 years. Over $40,000 in total between the transfers and hotels. $40,000 for her betrayal. I stared at the photos without really seeing them. My mind was blank or maybe too full. I couldn't tell. Mr. Montez, Lorenzo's voice brought me back. What do you want to do now? Can you give me copies of all this? I already did. It's all here. He pushed a folder towards me. I also included a USB with digital copies and a detailed report with dates, places, amounts, everything you'd need for a divorce process. Divorce, the word sounded strange. Final. How much do I owe you? The rest of the payment we agreed on, $2,000 more. I took out my checkbook. My hands trembled as I wrote. Lorenzo noticed, but didn't say anything. A piece of advice, Mr. Montez, he said, putting the check away. Don't confront her yet. Not with anger. Find a lawyer first. Protect your assets, your accounts. Make sure she can't take more than she already has. Do you know any good lawyers? Lorenzo took a card out of his wallet. This man is excellent. Tell him I referred you. I took the card. Antonio Ruiz, family lawyer. Thank you, I said, for everything. It's my job. He stood up to leave, then stopped. One more thing. I've seen many cases like this, and I always tell my clients the same thing. Revenge won't bring you peace, but justice will. Do it right legally, and you'll come out of this with your dignity intact. I nodded, although I wasn't sure I had any dignity left to save. After Lorenzo left, I sat in that cafe for another hour. The folder was in front of me. 52 photos, 23 pages of bank statements, 14 pages of printed messages, the evidence my marriage was a lie. I finally forced myself to get up. I put the folder in my briefcase. I walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and closed my eyes. Then, only then, I allowed the tears to come. I cried for the man I was, for the marriage I thought I had, for the 32 years that now felt like a cruel joke. I cried until there was nothing left to cry. Then I wiped my face, started the engine, and drove home. Teresa was in the living room watching TV when I walked in. "Hi, love," she said without turning around. "How was your day?" "Good," I replied, leaving my briefcase by the door. The folder inside contained her doom, and she had no idea. "And yours?" "Quiet. I was with Carmen all afternoon." Another lie. Lorenzo had sent me photos of her entering the hotel at 3 p.m. "That's good," I said. I sat next to her on the couch. She rested her head on my shoulder like she used to. The gesture that used to fill me with warmth now just made me nauseous. "I love you," she said. And I for the last time lied too. "I love you too." Monday morning, I called lawyer Antonio Ruiz. The name on the card Lorenzo had given me. His secretary gave me an appointment for that same day at 4 p.m. I told Teresa I had an important meeting at work. She barely looked up from her phone. "Okay, I'll be late today too. I have dinner with Dolores." Dolores. The name she used when she went to see Javier. She didn't even bother being creative with her lies anymore. "Have fun," I said, kissing her forehead. Antonio Ruiz's office was downtown in an old but well-maintained building. I walked up to the 3rd floor, taking the stairs. I needed time to think, to prepare. The reception area was simple. Brown leather furniture, landscape paintings on the walls. A woman in her 50s welcomed me with a professional smile. "Mr. Ruiz is expecting you." Antonio Ruiz was younger than I expected. Maybe 45, dark hair with some gray, impeccable suit. He greeted me with a firm handshake and invited me to sit. "Lorenzo called me," he said, getting straight to the point. "He told me your situation generally, but I need to hear it from you." I put the folder on his desk. "My wife has been unfaithful to me for at least 2 years. She's transferred $20,000 from our accounts to her lover. She spent another $20,000 on hotels. All this without my knowledge." Antonio opened the folder and began reviewing. His expression didn't change, but I saw his eyes moving quickly from one page to another. "How long have you been married?" 32 years. "Do you have children?" "No, we never could. That was another old wound." "Years of trying." of doctors, of broken hopes. Eventually, we gave up. We decided we'd be enough for each other. How wrong I was. Shared assets. The house is in my name. I bought it before we got married and paid off the entire mortgage. We have 2 cars, both in my name too. Joint bank accounts, but I'm the primary account holder. The money comes mainly from my salary. Antonio kept taking notes. Does she work? She worked during the first years of our marriage, but stopped 15 years ago. She said she wanted to focus on the house, on us. The irony burned my throat. I agreed. I wanted her to be happy. Do you have any kind of prenuptial agreement? No, when we got married, neither of us had anything. We built it all together. I paused, or so I thought. Antonio put down his pen and looked straight at me. Mr. Montez, I'm going to be honest with you. This case is relatively simple from a legal standpoint. You have solid proof of infidelity and embezzlement. The house is in your name, the cars too. She doesn't work and hasn't contributed financially in 15 years. What does that mean? It means in a divorce you'd have the upper hand, especially with this evidence. A judge would see the misuse of shared funds as a significant factor. He leaned back in his chair, but I need to ask you something important. What's it you want? I want a divorce. I want her out of my house, and I want her not to take anything that doesn't belong to her. Revenge. The question caught me by surprise. No, not revenge, justice. I thought of Lorenzo's words. I want my life back, my peace, my dignity. Antonio nodded, as if that were the right answer. So, this is what we're going to do. First, we're going to prepare the divorce papers. I'll include all this proof as evidence of adultery and embezzlement. Second, I recommend you close the joint accounts immediately and open new accounts solely in your name. I can do that. You're the primary account holder. You have every right. In fact, you should have done it yesterday. He leaned forward. Mr. Montez, she already took $40,000. Don't let her take more. He was right. Of course he was right. How long will it take to prepare the documents? A week, maybe less if we hurry. Meanwhile, I suggest you act normal. Don't confront her. Don't give her any sign you know anything. The element of surprise is your best ally. I've been pretending for weeks. One more won't make a difference. Good. I also recommend you change the locks on your house. But do that only after she signs the papers or after you formally serve her. And if she refuses to sign, then we'll go to trial. But with this evidence, I assure you she won't want to. A trial would make all this public. Her family would find out, her friends, everyone would see what she did. Antonio closed the folder. Most people in your situation prefer to sign and keep things private. We spent the next hour discussing details. Legal fees, deadlines, strategies. Antonio was meticulous, professional. He made me feel I finally had control over something. When I left his office, it was already night. The sky was dark, but I felt strangely light. For the first time in weeks, I felt I was doing something. I wasn't just a passive victim of Teresa's decisions. I drove to the bank before it closed. I talked to the manager, a man who'd known me for years. I need to close the joint accounts and open new ones solely in my name. He looked at me surprised, but was professional enough not to ask. Of course, Mr. Montez, all accounts, all of them. It took me an hour to complete the paperwork. When I finished, all the money left in our joint accounts was now in new accounts. Only in my name, new cards, new access. Teresa couldn't touch a dime anymore without my authorization. I got home past 8. Teresa hadn't returned yet. She was probably still at her dinner with Dolores. I poured myself a whiskey. I'm not a drinker, but that night I needed something to calm my nerves. I sat in my favorite armchair and waited. She arrived at 10:30. Fresh perfume, retouched makeup, relaxed smile. Sorry I'm late, she said, taking off her shoes. Dinner ran long. No problem, I replied. Did you have fun? Yes. Dolores is thinking about remodeling her kitchen. She asked me for advice. Every lie came out her mouth so easily. Light breathing. That's good, I said, taking another sip of whiskey. She looked at me curiously. Are you drinking? You almost never drink. Rough day at work. Do you want to talk about it? No, I didn't want to talk about anything with her. Anymore, I'm fine, just tired. That night, lying in bed with Teresa sleeping beside me, I thought about the coming days. Antonio would prepare the papers. I'd keep pretending, and when everything was ready, When I had everything in order, then I'd act. Not with anger, not with yelling, but with the cold precision of a man who'd finally taken control of his own life. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in weeks, I slept deeply because I knew the end was near. The following days passed in a strange calm. I lived two lives simultaneously. In one, I was the dedicated husband, the man who made coffee in the mornings and asked about his wife's day. In the other, I was a cold strategist, meticulously planning every step of my liberation. Antonio called me on Wednesday. The documents are ready. You can come pick them up. I went to his office during my lunch break. He handed me a thick sealed envelope. Everything's here. The divorce papers, the asset inventory, the organized evidence. It also includes a formal letter notifying the infidelity and misuse of funds. He paused. Are you sure you want to go ahead? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. So, my advice is this: wait for the right moment, a moment where she can't escape the conversation, where she has to face what she did. I know when that'll be. That night, during dinner, Teresa dropped the news casually. By the way, I'm going away for a few days next week. I looked up from my plate. Where? Carmen wants me to go with her to visit her sister on the coast. It'll just be 5 or 6 days. She smiled as if this were the most normal thing in the world. I need a break. A change of scenery. Carmen, another convenient lie. When were you leaving? Monday. You be back Saturday or Sunday? Monday. In 4 days. Okay. I said, going back to my food. Enjoy it. She seemed surprised by my ease in accepting it. It doesn't bother you? Why would it bother me? It's good for you to get out, relax. The words came out automatic, empty. You deserve it. And it was true. She deserved something, only it wasn't a relaxing trip. That night, after Teresa fell asleep, I went down to my office, took out the envelope Antonio had given me, and read it completely. Every page, every line, every proof of her betrayal documented on official paper. Then I took out my laptop and started making a list, everything I needed to do while she was away. Change the locks, remove her name from household utilities, pack her personal things in boxes, prepare everything for when she returned. But there was something else I needed to know, something gnawing at me. I opened my email and wrote to Lorenzo, I need one last favor. My wife says she's going on a trip on Monday. I need to know if she's really going with her friend or if it's another lie. His reply arrived in less than an hour. Send me the details. I'll find out. The weekend went by slowly. Teresa was busy packing, excited for her trip. I watched her from a distance, wondering how she could lie so easily, how she could kiss me on the cheek while packing new underwear in her suitcase. Sunday night, Lorenzo sent me a confirmed message. There's no reservation under Carmen's name at any hotel on the coast, but I found a reservation for 2 at a beach resort under Javier Ruiz's name. There was the definitive truth. She wasn't going to visit any friend. She was going to spend a week with him with my money at a resort that probably cost hundreds of dollars a night. I replied to Lorenzo, thank you. I have everything I need now. Monday morning, Teresa said goodbye to me with a kiss. I'll miss you, she lied. I lied back too. I watched her get into a taxi with her pink suitcase, the same suitcase I'd given her for our anniversary 3 years ago. The irony was cruel. When the taxi disappeared around the corner, I let out the breath I didn't know I was holding. Now my week began. The first thing was to call a locksmith. He arrived in an hour and changed all the locks in the house. Front door, back door, garage, 3 new locks with new keys. Trouble with your wife? The locksmith asked while working. Something like that. I've seen this before. Good luck, sir. Then I called the electric company, water, gas. I removed Teresa's name from all accounts. Now everything was only in my name. I hired 2 men to help me pack Teresa's things, her clothes, her shoes, her books, her jewelry, everything in labeled and organized boxes, not with cruelty, but with efficiency. Leave only the essentials, I told them, and only things that are clearly hers. It took me 3 days to complete everything. The house felt different without her things. Emptier, yes, but also cleaner. As if I were removing a layer of dirt that had been there for years. Thursday afternoon, Antonio came to the house. I want you to be a witness, I told him. When she returns, I want you to be here. Of course, when's she coming back? Sunday, probably in the afternoon. I'll be here. Friday, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the barber, got a haircut, got my beard trimmed. I bought a new shirt, white, simple but elegant. If I was going to close this chapter of my life, I'd do it looking like the man I deserve to be. Saturday, I cleaned the whole house, vacuumed, cleaned the floors, tidied every corner, not because she deserved it, but because I did. That night, I took out the black envelope, the one containing all the documents, all the evidence, everything I needed to finish this. I left it on the dining room sideboard waiting. I also prepared another envelope. This one was smaller, white, contained copies of all the evidence and a letter I'd written for Teresa's family, her mother, her two brothers, her close cousins. In a letter, I explained everything. The infidelity, the stolen money, the lies, not with cruelty, but with facts, numbers, dates, irrefutable evidence. If she signs the papers without complications, Antonio had told me, I never send this letter. But if she fights, if she tries to keep something that isn't hers, then everyone will know exactly who she is. It was my ace up my sleeve, my guarantee. She couldn't destroy me more than she already had. Sunday morning, I woke up early, made coffee, sat in the kitchen, and waited. Antonio would arrive at 2 p.m. Teresa, according to her text message, would arrive around 5. I showered, put on my new white shirt, looked in the mirror. The man looking back at me was different from a month ago. Thinner, maybe more tired, but also stronger. I'd spent 32 years building a life with a woman who didn't love me. 32 years being loyal to someone who betrayed me. But that ended today. At 2 sharp, Antonio knocked on the door. Ready? He asked. Ready. We sat in the living room. I had my favorite armchair, Antonio on the couch, the black envelope on the coffee table between us, and waited. At 5:15, I heard the sound of a car parking outside. A door closing, footsteps approaching, the sound of a key trying to enter the lock. Silence, another attempt. Then knocks on the door. Aurelio, are you there? My key doesn't work. I stood up slowly and walked towards the door. This was the moment everything changed. I opened the door. Teresa was there with her pink suitcase, with her smile waiting for me to ask how her trip had been. But I said nothing. I just took a step back and let her in. Why doesn't my key work? She asked, confused. Come in, I said simply. We have to talk. Teresa walked in dragging her suitcase, still with that expression of confusion mixed with irritation. Her eyes scanned the room and stopped on Antonio, who was standing next to the couch, with his impeccable suit and his leather briefcase. Who is he? She asked, looking at me. He's Antonio Ruiz, my lawyer. The word lawyer dropped like a bomb in the room. I saw her face change from confusion to alarm in a matter of seconds. Your lawyer, what's going on here? Aurelio. I didn't answer. I just walked toward the coffee table and picked up the black envelope. That envelope, I'd been waiting for this moment for days. I'd kept her entire sentence so carefully. Sit down, Teresa. I'm not going to sit until you tell me what. Sit down. My voice was firmer this time. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. The tone was enough. She sat slowly on the edge of the couch, her suitcase forgotten by the door. Her hands clutched her bag as if it were a life preserver. I stood in front of her. Antonio remained silent, observing a professional witness to this moment that had been brewing for weeks. How was your trip? I asked, my voice calm. Too calm. Good, Aurelio, please, what's happening? The coast was beautiful. Carmen enjoyed visiting her sister. Teresa blinked, confused by the question. Yes, it was nice. That's good. I took a step towards her because, I also had an interesting week, very productive. In fact, she looked at me without understanding where this was going. I changed the house locks. That's why your key doesn't work. I paused. I also closed all our joint bank accounts and opened new ones solely in my name. I removed your name from all utilities. Electricity, water, gas, internet. I saw the color start draining from her face. You can't do that. I already did. I also packed all your things. They're in the garage in label boxes. 27 boxes in total. I was very careful not to include anything of mine. Aurelio, what the hell? But that's not all. I handed her the black envelope. This is for you. She looked at the envelope as if it were a poisonous snake. What is it? Open it. Her hands trembled when she took the envelope. She opened it slowly, as if part of her knew what she'd find inside. The first photo slid out. She and Javier leaving the hotel. Her eyes widened. Where did you get this? There's more. Keep looking. She pulled out another photo and another. Each showed a different moment, a different day, a different lie. Her hands trembled so much she almost dropped the photos. Aurelio, I can explain. No, I raised a hand. I don't want your explanations. I don't care about your lies anymore. She kept pulling documents out of the envelope. The bank statements with transfers marked in red, hotel receipts, printed messages with her words of love for another man. His name's Javier Ruiz, I said, my voice still calm. He's 47, works in real estate, and for the last 2 years you've been giving him our money. $20,000 in direct transfers, another $20,000 on hotels where you met. $40,000 in total. Teresa was sobbing, now the photos scattered on her lap. Aurelio, please. And this week you said you were going with Carmen to visit her sister. Do you know where you really were? I leaned towards her at a beach resort with him, a luxury suite that cost $300 a night, 7 nights, $2,100. That you also planned to pay with our money. No, but this time you couldn't because I closed the accounts before you left. A bitter smile crossed my face. I guess he had to pay this time. How inconvenient for you. Antonio cleared his throat. It was his cue. The time to move to the legal stuff. Mrs. Montez, he said, his voice professional and cold. In that envelope, you'll also find divorce papers. Your husband is requesting dissolution of the marriage, based on proven adultery and misuse of shared funds. Teresa looked at him as if just realizing he was there. You'll also find, Antonio continues, a complete inventory of all marital assets. The house that's in Mr. Montez's name and was fully paid by him. The 2 vehicles also in his name, the bank accounts you no longer have access to. You can't take everything from me. We aren't taking anything from you that's yours, ma'am. We're simply protecting what belongs to my client. Antonio took a document from his briefcase. You have 2 options. You can sign these documents now accepting the divorce terms, which are very generous considering the circumstances. Generous. Teresa almost screamed the word. Generous, Antonio repeated firmly. Your husband isn't seeking restitution of the $40,000 you spent. He isn't filing criminal fraud charges, although he'd have legal grounds to do so. He simply wants a divorce and for you to leave. And if I don't sign, Antonio exchanged a look with me. I nodded. It was time to show the other card. If you don't sign, I said, walking to the sideboard and taking out the white envelope. Then I held it up. This envelope contains copies of all the evidence and a letter explaining in detail what you did. It's addressed to your mother, your brothers, your cousins, your friends, to every person we know. Horror took over her face. You wouldn't dare. I already dared a lot. Teresa, I dare to trust you for 32 years. I dare to work 12 hours a day to give you the life you wanted. I dare to love you even when you clearly didn't love me anymore. I took a step towards her. Don't challenge me now. Don't test me. She broke down. Sobs shook her whole body. Makeup ran down her cheeks, forming black lines. She looked small, broken, nothing like the confident woman who'd walked through that door 15 minutes ago. How could you do this? She whispered. 32 years together. I should be asking you that same question. I finally sat in my armchair, keeping my distance. 32 years, Teresa. 32 years in which I gave you everything. My time, my money, my loyalty, my love. And you gave me lies. It was a mistake. I can change. It isn't a mistake that lasts 2 years. It isn't a mistake that costs $40,000. It isn't a mistake when you lied to my face every day, when you kissed me with the same lips that kissed him. My voice broke slightly, but I recovered. That isn't a mistake, Teresa. That's a choice. Your choice. The silence that followed was thick, heavy as lead. Antonio spoke again. Mrs. Montez, I need an answer. Are you going to sign the documents? Teresa looked at the photos on her lap, then the white envelope in my hands, then at me. Her eyes searching for any sign. This was a nightmare. I'd changed my mind. She wasn't going to find it. Yes, I sign. Her voice was barely a whisper. What do I get? A quick and private dissolution of the marriage. Antonio answered, without a public scandal, without your family and friends knowing the details. And Mr. Montez won't seek restitution of the spent money. And the house is Mr. Montez's. It always was. The cars, too. Then I leave with nothing. There is anger in her voice now, mixed with desperation. You leave with your dignity intact, I said. If you still have any of that left, you can take everything I packed, your clothes, your jewelry, your personal things, and you leave without the whole world knowing what you did. I looked her straight in the eyes. That's your choice, Teresa. Sign and keep this private. Or don't sign and let everyone know exactly who you are. She sat there, trembling, crying, destroyed. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel sorry for her. I just felt relief this was ending. Teresa sat on that couch for what seemed like an eternity. Her hands trembled holding the documents. Tears fell on the photos. Staining the evidence of her betrayal, Antonio took a pen from his briefcase and placed it on the coffee table. The sound of metal against wood echoed in the silence like a gunshot. I need your decision, Mrs. Montez. She looked up at me. Her eyes were searching for something. Compassion, maybe forgiveness, one last chance. She found none of that in my gaze. Are you really going to do this? She asked with a broken voice. After everything we lived together. You already did it, Teresa, 2 years ago, when you decided he was more important than me, when you decided our marriage was worth less than a few stolen moments in cheap hotels. I leaned forward. I'm just signing the death certificate of something you already killed. I loved you. No, my voice cut the air like a knife. Don't say that. Don't you dare say that now. Love doesn't lie for 2 years. Love doesn't steal $40,000. Love doesn't look its partner in the eyes every morning while planning to be with someone else. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, shadows lengthening on the street. Neighbors were returning to their homes after a normal Sunday. For them, it was just another day. For me, it was the day I got my life back. You have 2 options, I said without turning around. You sign now, and this ends quietly. Or you don't sign, and tomorrow this envelope reaches your mother's hands. I heard a sob. Behind me. My mother, she has a weak heart. This could kill her. You should have thought of that before. I turned toward her. You should have thought of many things before, but you didn't. You only thought of yourself, what you wanted, what made you feel good. Antonio cleared his throat again. Mrs. Montez, it's 6 p.m. I need to be in another meeting at 7. I require your decision now. Teresa looked at the pen on the table, then the documents, then at me one last time. There's no other way. We can't try. No. The word came out firm. Final. No room for negotiation. She lowered her head. Her shoulders slumped in defeat. Slowly, with trembling hands, she picked up the pen. Where do I sign? Antonio showed her the pages marked with small red X's. There were 7 places she needed to sign. I watched her as she signed. Every stroke of the pen was like closing a door. Every signature was another nail in our marriage's coffin. When she finished, she dropped the pen as if it weighed 100 kilograms. It's done, she whispered. Antonio gathered the documents with professional efficiency. He reviewed them quickly, verifying each signature. Everything's in order. He put them in his briefcase. I'll file these in court tomorrow. The divorce will be official in 90 days. 90 days. 3 months for 32 years to officially turn into nothing. Mrs. Montez, Antonio continued, you have until next Sunday to remove your belongings from this property. After that date, Mr. Montez has the legal right to dispose of anything left. Teresa nodded without saying anything. I also remind you, you no longer have access to any bank account, credit card, or property in Mr. Montez's name. Any attempt to access these resources will be considered theft and legal action will be taken. I understand, she murmured. Antonio looked at me, waiting for my signal. I nodded. His job here was done. Then, if you'll excuse me, he stood up and grabbed his briefcase. He reached out his hand to me. Mr. Montez, I'll call you tomorrow after filing the documents. Thank you, Antonio. I walked him to the door. When he left, I turned to Teresa. She was still sitting on the couch, surrounded by photographs of her betrayal, looking like a broken version of the woman I married 3 decades ago. You have to leave, I said simply. Now tonight now, but I have nowhere to go. You should call Javier. I'm sure he can help you. The coldness in my voice surprised even me. After all, he's the reason you're in this situation. She stood up with difficulty, as if her legs could barely support her. Can I at least take some clothes? Your things are packed in the garage. You can take some boxes now. You have to pick up the rest during the week. She headed towards a garage with slow steps, dragging her feet. I stayed in the living room without following her. I heard the sound of boxes moving, of packing tape tearing. 15 minutes later, she came back dragging 2 large boxes. Her pink suitcase was still by the door. That suitcase, full of clothes she'd packed for her week with him. I need to call a taxi, she said without looking at me. Do it. She took out her phone with trembling hands. Dialed a number. Her voice was barely a whisper when she gave the address. 10 minutes, she said, after hanging up. We stood there in awkward silence, waiting 2 strangers who once shared a life. Now, with nothing to say to each other. She picked up the photos from the couch, trying to put them back in the envelope. Leave it, I said. It doesn't matter anymore, Aurelio. Her voice broke. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I wanted to tell her I didn't care about her apology. It was too little, too late. Her words couldn't undo 2 years of lies and betrayal. But I said nothing because giving her an answer, any answer, meant I still cared enough to speak, and I didn't care anymore. The sound of a horn outside broke the silence. Your taxi, I said. Teresa grabbed her suitcase with one hand and started dragging one of the boxes towards the door. She struggled with the weight, but I offered no help. Those days were over. She managed to get the first box out. She came back for the second, at the door, stopped, and looked at me one last time. I hope someday you can forgive me. Don't expect anything from me. Teresa, you don't have that right anymore. Her eyes filled with tears again, but they didn't fall. She didn't have any left. She left closing the door behind her. I walked to the window and watched as the taxi driver helped her put the boxes in the trunk, as she got in the back seat, as the taxi drove down the street, taking 32 years of my life in 2 cardboard boxes. When the taxi disappeared from sight, I let out a sigh I didn't know I was holding. I turned around and looked at the house. My house empty now of her things, but also empty of her lies. The photos were still scattered on the couch. I picked them up one by one and put them back in the black envelope. Then I walked to the fireplace. We hadn't used it in years, but it still worked. I lit a match. I watched as the flames consumed the envelope, the photos, the documents, as years of betrayal turned to ashes. I didn't need that proof anymore. She had signed. It was all over. When the fire died out, I poured myself another whiskey, the second in my life. In the same week, I sat in my favorite armchair and drank slowly, savoring the burn in my throat. Outside, night had fallen completely. The house was silent, a different silence than before. It wasn't the awkward silence of unspoken secrets. It was the silence of peace. For the first time in 2 years, I was alone in my own house, and for the first time in 2 years, I felt free. The days after that night passed in a strange quietness. The house felt different, quieter, yes, but not in an oppressive way. It was the silence of a space that could finally breathe. Antonio called me Monday morning. The documents were filed. Everything is in order. The judge scheduled the final hearing for 87 days from now, but it's just a formality. With her signature on the papers, the divorce is practically finalized. Thank you, Antonio. How are you doing, Mr. Montez? It was a simple question, but nobody had really asked me. Better than I expected, I admitted. Different, but better. That's good. And remember, if she tries to contact you or cause you trouble, call me immediately. But Teresa didn't call. Didn't come to pick up the rest of her things that week, as she was supposed to. There were no messages, no pleas, nothing. It was as if she'd disappeared from my life as completely as she'd disappeared that week at the resort with Javier. On Wednesday, my brother Antonio came to visit me. I hadn't called him, but I guess news travels fast in small families. I heard what happened, he said, sitting in the kitchen while I made coffee. Who told you? Teresa called Mom crying, saying you'd kick her out for no reason. Of course she did. Of course she painted herself as the victim. And what did you tell Mom? The truth that I'd seen you different months ago. I suspected something wasn't right. Antonio took the coffee mug I offered him. Mom is on your side. in case you were wondering. She says if you had enough proof to do this, then you did the right thing. I had proof. I said simply, do you want to talk about it? No. Antonio nodded understandingly. We sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee, as we'd done 1,000 times in our life. How do you really feel? He asked. I finally thought about the question. How did I feel? Relieved, I said honestly, sad but relieved. Like when you take off a shoe that's been hurting you all day. It hurts, but the relief of taking it off is greater than the pain. It's a good comparison. 32 years, Antonio. 32 years with someone who turned out to be a complete stranger. Not your whole life was a lie, my brother said. The early years were real. What you had at the beginning was real. It was. I leaned back in my chair, or I was just too blind to see the signs from the beginning. Don't torture yourself with that. You trusted your wife. That isn't being blind, it's being human. Maybe he was right, but it still hurt. Neighbors started noticing Teresa wasn't around. Mrs. Carmen from next door was the first to ask. Is Teresa on a trip? She asked one afternoon while watering her plants. Teresa left. I replied, simply left. Where? I don't know and I don't care. I saw realization appear in her eyes. News of a divorce in a quiet neighborhood travels faster than fire. By Friday, everyone knew. Some neighbors avoided me, uncomfortable with the situation. Others offered me sympathetic smiles when they saw me. Nobody asked directly what happened, but everyone speculated. I let them speculate. The truth was mine, and I didn't have to share it with anyone. Saturday morning, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me do it. Mr. Montez, it was a woman's voice, young, nervous. Yes, my name's Dolores. I was Teresa's friend. Dolores, the name Teresa used constantly as an alibi. What do you need? I need you to know something. Teresa used me. She used me as an excuse for months. I didn't know what was happening. I swear, I thought she was really with me when she said she was with me. Why are you calling to tell me this? There was a silence because she came to my house. She's living with me temporarily, and she's telling everyone you're a monster. You kicked her out for no reason. You're leaving her with nothing after 30 years. Dolores's voice trembled, but I found some messages on her phone when she left it unlocked. I saw the things she said about you, the lies, and I don't think it's fair. I stayed silent for a moment. Thank you for calling, Dolores, but you don't have to worry. I know the truth. That's enough. Aren't you going to defend yourself? Aren't you going to tell people what she did? Because I don't need the world to know my truth to live with it. I paused, but I appreciate your call, and I'm sorry you were dragged into this. After hanging up, I sat in silence thinking about that conversation. Teresa was out there painting me as the villain, telling people I was cruel. I'd abandoned her for no reason. Part of me wanted to shout the truth from the rooftops, show everyone the photos, the messages, the proof of her betrayal, but the wiser part of me knew it didn't matter. The people who really knew me knew I wouldn't do something like that without a reason. And the people who didn't know me, well, their opinions weren't worth my peace. Sunday afternoon, exactly a week after Teresa left, I sat in the backyard with a coffee. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining, birds were singing, a gentle breeze moved the leaves on the trees. I thought of all the Sundays I'd spent here with Teresa. Breakfasts on the patio, conversations about nothing and everything, plans for the future that would never materialize. I missed her. I missed the idea of her, the woman I thought she was, the partner I thought I had, but the real woman, the one who lied to me for years. No, I didn't miss her. My phone rang. It was Lorenzo, the investigator. Mr. Montez, just calling to see how you were doing. I heard the papers were signed. That's right. How do you feel? Like I've been carrying a huge rock on my back and finally let it go. Lorenzo laughed. That's a good sign. Listen, there's something you should know. Javier Ruiz, the man your wife was with, well, apparently he broke up with her. Really? Yes. A friend of mine who works in the same field told me Javier confessed he was only with her because she gave him money. When he found out you'd closed the accounts, he ended the relationship immediately. I should have felt justified, vindicated, but I just felt pity. Pity for Teresa, who destroyed her marriage for a man who only wanted her for money. Thanks for telling me, Lorenzo. I just thought you should know. Take care, Mr. Montez. After hanging up, I kept looking at the garden. Teresa had lost everything. Her marriage, her home, her lover, probably the respect of many people who knew her. I'd lost my wife, but I'd gained something more important. I'd gained my dignity, I'd gained my truth, and I'd gained the chance to start over, without lies, without betrayal, without carrying the weight of someone else's decisions. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept deeply, without nightmares, without waking up in the middle of the night, heart racing, just peace. Justice, I discovered, doesn't always come with fireworks and dramatic revenge. Sometimes it comes quietly in the form of signed papers and closed accounts. Sometimes it comes in the form of being able to sleep peacefully knowing you did the right thing. And that was enough. 3 months later, on a Tuesday morning, I received Antonio's call. The divorce is official. It's signed by the judge. Legally, you're a free man, Mr. Montes. Free. The word echoed in my mind strangely. After 32 years, I was just me again, just Aurelio. Thank you, Antonio, for everything. It was a pleasure helping you. And remember, if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to call. I hung up the phone and sat in my office looking out the window. The world kept turning, people kept going to work, living their lives, chasing their dreams. And I was starting over at 63. It wasn't how I'd imagined it. When I was young and married Teresa, I thought we'd grow old together, we'd have grandkids visiting us on Sundays, we'd walk holding hands in our golden years. Life had other plans, but I discovered something in those 3 months of loneliness. I discovered being alone isn't the same as being lonely. I started doing things I'd forgotten I liked. I started reading again, something I'd stopped doing because Teresa always wanted to watch TV. I bought a book about Roman history I'd always been interested in and devoured it in a week. I started really cooking, not just heating up food or making basic things, but experimenting with new recipes. One Saturday, I made an ossobuco that turned out better than I expected. I sat alone to eat it and enjoyed every bite without having to hear complaints that it had too much garlic or too little salt. My brother Antonio came to visit me every week. Sometimes he brought his wife Alma. It was good to have company, but it was also good when they left and I could go back to my tranquility. You look different, Antonio told me one afternoon later. I feel different. Have you thought about dating someone else? Meeting a woman? The question made me laugh. Antonio, I'm 63. I'm not looking for romance. I'm looking for peace. Peace is fine, but company too. Maybe someday, but right now I just need this. I need to be with myself. And it was true. After decades of living for another person, of adjusting my life to Teresa's desires and needs, I needed to remember who I was alone. A Thursday afternoon, 2 months after the official divorce, I was at the supermarket when I saw her. Teresa was in the cereal aisle, looking thinner than I remembered her. Her hair was neat. She wore simple clothes, nothing like the expensive outfits she used to wear. Our eyes met for a second. I saw her face change, how she considered approaching, but something in my expression must have stopped her. She looked away and walked quickly down another aisle. I didn't feel anything, neither anger, nor sadness, nor satisfaction at seeing her like that, just nothing. And that nothing was liberating because it meant she'd stopped mattering. She no longer took up space in my heart or my mind. She was simply someone I used to know. I finished my shopping and went home. I made dinner, a simple baked chicken with vegetables. I put on music, some soft jazz I'd recently discovered. I ate in the backyard while the sun set. The sky was painted in oranges and pinks, a spectacle that had always been there, but I rarely stopped to appreciate. I thought about everything that had happened, how my life had changed so drastically in a matter of months, how the man I was 6 months ago probably wouldn't recognize the man I was now. I learned things about myself in these months. I learned I was stronger than I thought. I could make difficult decisions when necessary. I could be alone without feeling empty. I also learned about forgiveness. Not forgiveness towards Teresa. I wasn't sure I could ever give that, but forgiveness toward myself for not seeing the signs sooner, for allowing myself to be treated like that for so long, for trusting when I should have questioned. I forgave myself for being human, for loving someone who didn't love me back, for believing in a marriage that was already dead. Forgiveness didn't come in a dramatic moment. It came quietly in small waves over months. In the mornings when I woke up and no longer felt that weight on my chest. At night, when I fell asleep without reproaching myself for my blindness. One Saturday morning, 6 months after that Sunday, when everything changed, I woke up early. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in golden tones. I made my coffee in the Italian coffee maker. The aroma filled the kitchen as it always had, but now it was just for me, and that was fine. I sat on the patio with my hot mug in my hands. The birds were starting their morning song. The cool morning air brushed my face. I thought of the man I'd been, the one who woke up every day to make coffee for a woman who was betraying him, the one who worked overtime to maintain a comfortable life she used to fund her infidelity, the one who smiled and nodded while his marriage crumbled in secret. That man didn't exist anymore. In his place was someone new, or maybe someone old I'd rediscovered, a man who knew his worth, who understood loyalty wasn't weakness and betrayed trust wasn't his fault. A man who'd learned sometimes the greatest power isn't in revenge, but in simply letting go, because that was what I'd finally done. I let go not only of Teresa, but of the anger, the resentment, the bitterness threatening to consume me. I'd chosen peace over pain, dignity over revenge, my future over my past. And in that choice, I'd found something I didn't expect to find: freedom. Not the freedom of being single, but the freedom of being complete by myself, of not needing someone else to feel valuable, of knowing I could be alone and be fine. I took a sip of coffee and watched the sun rising slowly on the horizon. A new day was beginning, like every day before this one, like every day that would come after. But this day was mine, completely mine, without lies, without betrayal, without carrying the weight of someone else's decisions, just mine. And for the first time in years, maybe decades, I felt completely at peace. I didn't know what the future held for me, if I'd fall in love again someday, or if I'd spend the rest of my life alone, if Teresa would find her way, or if she'd stay lost in her own lies. But that didn't matter to me anymore, because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. True power isn't in getting revenge on whoever hurt you. It's in healing enough so that person no longer has power over you. It's in getting up every morning and choosing your own peace over their chaos. It's in looking in the mirror and recognizing the man you see, respecting him, valuing him. I finished my coffee while the sun finished rising. The shadows of the night disappeared, replaced by the light of day. I stood up, stretched my 63-year-old body, and smiled, because if I'd learned anything from all this, it was simple. Sometimes the most valuable things we lose in life aren't the things we wanted to keep. Sometimes losing is the only way to win. And I had won. I had won my life back, and that I discovered was worth more than any marriage based on lies. I walked back into the house, my house, and closed the door softly behind me. A new day was beginning, and I was ready to live it.